September that has crumbled for the Twins, and three Twins prospects are in the updated top 100 at Baseball America. It's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Minnesota Twins podcast. Today is Monday, September 26th, and I'm your gracious host, Nash Walker. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Again, this is Nash Walker, Season 3, hosting a daily podcast on the Twins, and Season 4, writing about the Twins at twinsdaily.com. Some shocking numbers behind the Twins' horrific September for you today, and I think might help us going into the offseason as we start to think about what they need and what the actual problems are on the roster, because there's not clear holes where we don't have a player there. They have a lot of spots where somebody could assume that position. They could always get better. They have a lot of places to get better. I think these numbers, because it's been September for the Twins, they came into September with a chance to win the Central, and they've had a terrible September. So looking at those numbers and looking at what happened here in this month might help us start to think about the winter. Plus, the Twins have three in the top 100, three prospects in the top 100, the updated top 100 at baseballamerica.com. And we'll discuss what that means today as well. So the Twins are 7-17 in September. 7-17. The Guardians have won 18 of their last 21 games. So that's quite the contrast there between the two teams. And if you're wondering how Cleveland won the Central, they won the Central in September. They hung around long enough in basically the same spot the Twins were in. The Twins were in first all summer, but you come into September essentially in the same position, and the Guardians took off while the Twins flat out crumbled here in the final month. As a team, and this is what I want to highlight here, when we look at the problems in September, yes, they're missing a lot of their guys. We'll get into that. As a team, they're hitting 240 with a 297 on base percentage and slugging 354. As a team, they have 0.8 Fangraphs wins above replacement, which includes defense. That's offensive defense. Wins above replacement. 0.8 in the month of September. Dead last. That's dead last in the American League. Absolute last in the league in wins above replacement in September. That's below Oakland. That's below Detroit. That's below Kansas City. They have the worst position player group in September, period, in the American League. And I think they're third worst in Major League Baseball. I think maybe the Rockies and the Pirates are below them, or the Nationals, who are in a complete teardown rebuild. As a team, they have an ERA of 4.69, 0.7 wins above replacement, tied for 24th in Major League Baseball. So this is a full scale team-wide collapse. It's the pitching and the offense, and we've seen defensive mistakes as well. A lot of defensive miscues and some errors. What it boils down to for me on the position player side, because coming into this season, we knew, and I kind of made a point of this throughout the year. I wanted to make a point of this. This team, the upside in this team is in Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa, and their ability to stay healthy and their ability to turn it on in the second half of the season. And the Twins had two goals this year, in my mind, two clear goals. They had a lot of goals, obviously, but they're two clear goals this season, in the regular season. Number one, win the Central and get into the playoffs. Number two was keep Byron Buxton healthy. Try to keep him healthy enough into that playoff run. Because if you get a month, and we're going to look at Correa's numbers in September, if you get a month like Correa's having from him and Buxton in the end of September and into October, that's where the upside was in this group. So for me, the formula for success this year was let's field a good enough team to win the Central. And then when we get into October, try to keep Buxton healthy, and if we have Buxton and Correa into October and they're clicking together, we like our chances there and have a good enough rotation. And they didn't fill that hole. You know, we've talked at length about how they didn't fill that other frontline rotation spot, but that was the goal for them. Those are the two goals this season: win the Central, keep Buxton healthy into October, because in September their best player, Carlos Correa, and you might look at Correa and Buxton as 1A and 1B. Correa's hitting 366 with a 422 on base percentage, slugging 634. That's an OPS of 1,056, 6 home runs, and 16 runs driven in. This is how they drew it up. This is what they were excited about, what I was excited about, what Twins fans were excited about when the team signed Carlos Correa. It was he's going to turn it on when it matters. And I think throughout the summer, at the halfway mark at the All-Star game, one of my big storylines for the second half was Correa turning it on. And he did. Unfortunately, the rest of the team crumbled and the team is out of the race. But this is the excitement. This is where it was. If Correa does this, and he's doing it, he's done it every day basically in September into October, which he's done before. He's done it before in his career. The upside there is massive. He can carry you. He can carry an offense. Still needs help. He still needs the other best players on the team. So the best players going into September on the season, these have been their best players. Arise, Correa, Buxton, Polanco, Miranda, and Gordon. I would say those are their 6 best hitters this season. Correa crushing, doing an amazing job at the plate. Luis Arise hitting 286, but this is a good example of why batting average is not just that you stand alone. Oh, he's hitting 286 in September. No, he's got a 302 on base percentage. He's barely getting on base in 30% of his plate appearances, and he's hitting for no power when earlier this season, for much of the season, was hitting for moderate power, like decent power, hitting for none. He's slugging 357. OPS is at 659. And here's another number for you. 3 runs driven in September. 3 runs driven in for Luis Arise. So he's obviously dinged up. I've said that. I've made that a point, and I actually think there have been times in this September where he probably shouldn't be playing. He's dinged up, and he hasn't been the same guy in the second half, flat out. Their 4th best player is Jorge Polanco, and he's played 0 games in September. Their 5th best player is Jose Miranda, and he's hit 263, decent, 333 on base, but he's slugging 390. The power is gone in September. 2 home runs, 8 runs driven in. Nick Gordon's had a good September, hitting 275, OPS at 776, 3 homers, 13 runs driven in. But you understand my point here. Their 6 best hitters, 2 of them have not played a single game in September in Buxton and Polanco. One of them has really slowed down in Luis Arise. Another, Jose Miranda, is hitting for no power and not driving in runs like he was when he first came up. You have Correa crushing, and then Nick Gordon's doing what he's done all year. But that's not enough from your 6 best players. That's not enough, and it kind of highlights the offensive problems. It's not just those 6, though. It goes beyond them, the depth and the upside players on this roster, and then the pitching staff and what we can learn from the staff in September as we look toward the offseason. After this word from Bet Online. Football's back. College football, the NFL is back, and betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, the MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today at betonline.net. You can use your mobile device to learn more. You can use your mobile device or you can go to the desktop, whatever you prefer at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. BetOnline is where the game starts. Again, for football, anything you're looking for, lines, odds, info, it's all there. BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is where the game starts. The depth pieces in the offense as well, beyond the 6 best hitters this year. Trevor Larnach has played 0 games in September. Alex Kirilloff has played 0 games in September. Ryan Jeffers has played 0 games in September. Kyle Garlick went 5 for 37 with 5 singles, 17 strikeouts, and no walks to this point in September. That highlights everything. Not enough from your best players, clearly, and nothing from your depth pieces and your bench. Like, you're getting nothing from those guys. There it is offensively. I mean, the numbers are shockingly bad, but there's reason for that. You look beyond that. There's just the surface numbers at guys individually, and you understand why this is happening. The pitchers, I know they have a team ERA of 4.69. I think that's inflated by some innings that have exploded, games they already lost that the offense couldn't score and the pitching staff just kind of bled out at the end of the game. But Sonny Gray, 4 starts, 3.32 ERA, opponent's OPS at 6.96. Joe Ryan, 4 starts, a very good September for Joe Ryan at a 2.78 ERA, opponent's OPS at 4.53. So Joe Ryan's been excellent. Sonny Gray is hurt now, but was good in his 4 starts. Tyler Mahle, 1 start, 2 innings, 4 earned runs. So that's ugly. You looked at those big three after the trade deadline. Gray, Ryan, Mahle is our game 1, 2, and 3 starters in whatever order. And Mahle gave you nothing in September. He's hurt. Yohan Duran, 10 innings, $1.80 ERA. He's doing what he's done all year. And then Jorge Lopez, your big bullpen acquisition at the deadline, 7 2/3, 9.39 ERA, opponent's OPS at 9.86. Thielbar's been great. Duran's been great. Sonny Gray's solid. Joe Ryan's been great. So there's a lot better signs on the pitching side in September. Overall, banged up like the position player side, but not insurmountable like the position player side. It's not like, oh, that's obvious, why this team has collapsed. I think the reason this team has collapsed in September, the main reason is the offense. They're not scoring. And I said coming into the season, I've said throughout the year, this is a team that's built to score runs. They're not going to win a lot of games where they score 3 runs or 4 runs even. That's not how they're built, and they weren't built as a complete team. It's been an incomplete team for much of the year on the pitching side. So that's why that's their identity. But it's also because they had Correa, Buxton, Polanco, Arise, Miranda, Gordon. They have a lot of good hitters. That's why it's their identity. And if you're not going to score when that's your identity, if you don't play to what makes you good, you're not going to win. And they haven't at all in September, and they haven't won. They're 7-17. There's more on the horizon. The Twins have 3 position player prospects in the top 100 at Baseball America. Brooks Lee came in at 37. Royce Lewis came in at 54. And Emmanuel Rodríguez came in at 80. I got some replies today wondering why the Twins only have 3. Why do they only have 3? Well, Spencer Steer is in the 90s. That would have been 4. And then the Twins have also graduated Miranda and Duran and Winder and Ryan. They've graduated a lot of guys since, even September of last year. Griffin Jacks, they've graduated quite a few guys. Not all of those guys would be in the top 100. It probably only would have been Miranda, maybe Winder, maybe Duran, maybe he's still a reliever. So there's less value there. But they graduated guys. And for Miranda specifically, who would have been in the top 100, like had he still had prospect status, he has 6 full years of team control beyond this season. So he has the same amount of team control, on the surface as a Brooks Lee or as a Royce Lewis or as somebody else. He's got the same amount of team control. The difference is you can call up Brooks Lee like they called up Miranda this year and get 6.5 years of team control on him. So he's got a half step less team control, but 6 full seasons, just like everybody else. So he's one of the, better young players in the organization, probably the best young position player in the organization. You could argue it's Lee, you could argue it's Lewis, but that's an example of why looking at prospects lists, it's not always the best way to view organizational health in a minor league system, because guys graduate and they're still young and they still have a lot of team control. They're just on the major league roster. And in many cases, you should feel better about guys already on the roster, already hitting, already producing. I think for Miranda, the upside is lower because defensively, he hasn't been good at first base. And I don't know if the Twins trust him at third. I don't know if I trust him at third. So where's he going to play? Is he a DH? Is he going to hit enough to be a DH? That's why Miranda's upside is a little bit lower than someone like Lee or someone like Lewis or Emmanuel Rodríguez. Those are upside guys. And Lee has a high floor as well. I think Lee has the highest floor among the 3 because Lewis has had 2 ACL surgeries. Emmanuel Rodríguez is 19 at low A. And what he's doing has been incredible. But Lee, with his hit tool, he's a switch hitter. He's a advanced peer college bat, crushed at Cal Poly, crushed in the Cape Cod League. There's a reason he's a top 40 prospect in baseball. It is a big question, like, is he going to be ready next year? And we kind of went over this last week. I think, yes, he's going to be in the plans in 2023. And as you see these lists kind of come out, Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus, MLB Pipeline, Brooks Lee is consistently going to be a consensus top 50 prospect. It's nice to see that Royce Lewis remains in that range at 54 at Baseball America. That's great to see for him. And Emmanuel Rodríguez, we haven't talked about Emmanuel very much, Erod, this summer because he tore his meniscus and he's been out for basically all season. But incredible. The walk rate, the power that he's showing as a 19-year-old, and Baseball Prospectus, they actually wrote an article today. I can't remember who wrote it. I apologize. But they said Emmanuel Rodríguez is a potential 5-tool center fielder. That's his upside, a 5-tool center fielder. He's 19 and destroying a ball. So they have higher upside prospects in the top 100. In Lewis, of course, we saw what Royce can do, and then Erod as well. I think Lee has a higher floor, but it is interesting to see 3 and none in the top 35. Lee is the highest at 37. I think this system has thrived more on its depth in recent seasons than top end talent. I think that's true. The difference is your top end none of their top end talent has been able to stay healthy. Like if you look at their top 5 prospects, I guess you could put Duran into that, but I would have said, their top 5 prospects last year, maybe Cantorino breaks that top 5, but their top 5 prospects to me were Lewis, Kirilloff, Larnick, maybe Duran, Winder. That's probably your group. Balazovic is probably 6. And Balazovic has been hurt and terrible at AAA. Winder, shoulder problem, not very good in the majors. Duran's been excellent. Lewis, 2 ACL surgeries. Kirilloff, myriad wrist problems, right? So their top 5 prospects unable to stay healthy in a lot of these seasons. You can go back to Sano and Buxton. You can go back to Mauer and Morneau, unable to stay healthy. It goes back much further than just this year. And I just hope there's going to be a time when they have top prospects, legitimate top 30 to 50 or even 10. Like Alex Kirilloff was like 15. Royce Lewis has been a top 10 prospect in baseball. Guys like that, I hope that we have a group that is able to stay relatively healthy. And I'm reading about Brooks Lee today, and my stomach just dropped because I'm reading about him at Baseball America. His biggest questions: defensive home and his ability to stay healthy, because he's had health problems already in his young career. And I'm just thinking, here we go again. And I just hope there's a day where there's a top prospect and they have a relatively healthy track to the majors. Hopefully that's the case for Brooks Lee. Hopefully that's the case for Emmanuel Rodriguez. But to me, for Erod, among the 3, I think who has the best chance to be a top 15, top 10 prospect in baseball, it's definitely Erod, just because he's the youngest and he has the longest path to the majors. And Lee's probably going to be here and graduate prospect status at the end of 2023, and Royce will as well. But Erod and his upside, I don't think the Twins have had a prospect with this sort of upside in a long time. Like you could go back to Buxton, and he's not a Buxton level prospect. Byron was the best prospect in the world. But Emmanuel Rodriguez has more upside, I think, than any prospect they've had in a long time, because so many guys like Kirilloff and Larnick and even Lewis, like Lewis has high upside too. And he's in that same group, and he did. And now he's had 2 ACL surgeries. I think it's more capped because you worry about his speed and his explosiveness. But Rodriguez, with the 5-tool ability, with the potential 5-tool, there's also a chance he never makes it with the swing and miss. So it's like high volatility prospect, but they haven't had a guy like that. And maybe they'll hit, maybe Emmanuel Rodriguez will hit because they've had higher guys perceived as having higher floors, like Kirilloff, like Larnick, even like Josh Winder, having higher floors but lower upside. Those guys have either been hurt or not as good as we thought they were going to be. And they have time, it's not over by any means for Kirilloff. Kirilloff could end up being a great major league hitter. Larnick could end up being a great major league player. Lewis, I think, has a good chance still to be a very good major league player for the Twins. We just haven't seen those high floor prospects pan out as much for the Twins. So I wonder, maybe it's time for one of those high ceiling prospects to hit, and they've reached that upside, because the floor prospects, they haven't even reached their floor and they already didn't have the upside, right? So it's kind of a dual-edged sword there in some ways. I'm excited about these 3. Certainly, I think they all 3 have a chance to be very good major league players. I think you're going to see Lee and Lewis in 2023. Rodriguez is probably further away, maybe the second half of 24. He's 19, age 19 season in low A, but doing what he did is always impressive. And there's a reason he's a top 100 prospect, even doing that at low A, because he has the tools, he's got the power, he's got the projectability and his size to be a potential impact major league player, like impact player. So we'll see as these lists comes out. As these lists come out, I will continue to analyze them and kind of give my take on where guys are at. Seems about right. I mean, those seem like the right spots. And Lewis has been slowly descending over the years with the injuries. And 2019 was kind of a disastrous season for him in the minors. But it's still good to see him in that range, still in like firmly in the top 75 of prospects because he still has that upside, because he has the makeup, because he did show up and show out in the majors for the Twins. We'll continue to analyze these things. I hope these numbers helped you get a better idea of what's happened here in a horrific September for the Twins. They got 9 games left. They're going to start a 3-game series against the White Sox at Target Field on Tuesday. Then they're going to go to Detroit and they're going to play the Tigers over the weekend. And then they're going to Chicago to finish out for 3 more against the White Sox on the road. So 3 more games at Target Field in this season will come to a close. I will say again, this is a tough finish, and it's been a tough finish. This has been brutal to watch in September because they had a legitimate chance here and they didn't take it. And we do have a big offseason ahead. It's a crucial offseason for this front office. It's a crucial offseason for everybody involved in the organization, I think, because if they go out and do this again next year, that's 3 straight losing seasons. That's 3 straight non-playoff seasons. That's 7 years of this front office with no playoff wins. And it's a big year. It's a big offseason. They have flexibility to go out and make some real moves to impact this roster. So we have so much coming up. Hang in there. We got 9 more games, and I'll be here with a post-game Tuesday. Thanks so much for making Locked On Twins your first listen today. And I'll make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day. We'll talk tomorrow. Go Twins.